Welcome back to the Badger247 show. Once again, I'm Matt Perkins, joined, as always, by Badger247 writers John McNamara and Nick Osen, coming to us live from Platteville today. Love to see it, Nick, on location. How are things down there in Southwest Wisconsin?
Man, Perko and Mac, I know we're going to get a lot more in detail, so save a little bit of the football part for now. But I've loved the time, guys, to be honest. I told our guy Payne, who's been doing great work with this as well, like, this is some of the best times of the year. Great to be out in Southwest Wisconsin. We've hit a couple good food spots. It's a really good spot to be right now.
Yeah, it is. And I think that obviously it's camp time. Vibes are going to be high. This is about peak optimism season, I would say, Nick. So my first question for you is going to be, what that you have seen here in the past 2 weeks gives you the most optimism for the 2025 season for Wisconsin?
Man, Perko, can I give you two? Is that okay? Two things?
I mean, yes, of course. Why not?
All right, I'm going to go with that. So one, I think would have been really the answer that I've given since, I would say, the spring, even before we all made this, great team and got some of this content going. It was about running the football. And that has been this story through, we'll say, 2 weeks of camp. However, I'm going to focus on the offense just because we've been writing a lot about the defense. But today, as we record on Friday, I saw some things in the deep ball game that we had not necessarily been seeing consistently. And that, we've seen a great throw from Billy here, Danny here, Simmons here. But today it was a lot of Billy Edwards, QB1. And I thought that this is probably his second best practice since being a Badger and his best really this fall here in Platteville. I thought he was terrific. And if the offense is moving like that, I've been pitching that this team's going to be good. I haven't said they're going to win 10, 11 games, but if they can hang and open things up like we saw today, they're going to stay in the fight against some of those top 10 teams.
I mean, that would be something, John. I'm curious, though, along with that, is if the offensive line is going to be able to keep the quarterback upright long enough to get some of those deep balls. That's been an issue a couple times in the past few years. Just going off of practice reports, it looks like Heinz and Brunner, Renfro, Mandel, Malman from left to right. John, if you're a betting man, is that who you're expecting to start on opening day?
Well, I'll kick this over to Nick because, and I don't want to misspeak here, but Kerry Kadenko could potentially get a little bit more workload at center now. Nick, maybe you want to speak to that because you'd be a better person than I would. But if Jake Renfro, who you talked about, Nick, when you tweeted it out, his status for the season opener is not in jeopardy. He's week to week, according to what you put out there. But if Jake Renfro is not able to go due to, a lower body injury, Kerry Kadenko becomes a very important piece there. Likely the top interior option, but also a guy that was fighting for that starting job at right guard, right, Nick?
Yeah, Mac, I appreciate that. So, without getting into the semantics too much, guys, I will say I think we as writers, because obviously, you get to know these people, certainly the players and Jake Renfro themselves, I think there was some really encouraging news Friday, guys. So there were some questions, about Renfro, something suffered at practice. And obviously we sat on that with respect to the players and the program. And so the news we just got about 20 minutes ago that I tweeted out from Wisconsin was very encouraging. Basically, it avoided structural damage. We got the go-ahead to mention that. And it is week to week. And obviously when, a big, strong guy like that maybe goes down and, you see him helped off the field, things of that nature, maybe there's a little bit more concern. So I thought that was actually really encouraging. Mac, you're right. Whether it's week 1, week 3, whenever he does come back, you like Kadenko at center to sub in there. And it speaks to, Fickle was a little bit clairvoyant last week talking about you can't really replicate the value of those, right? 22, 23-year-old guys have been around, have played 4 or 5 positions. And, boom, obviously you're glad it's not a long-term thing, but he was spot on. And just to kind of tee off, Perko, what you first said, I thought that the line was solid to good probably through 6-7. And the last couple days, I'd say the last 2.5 practices, they were terrific. You saw massive holes. And then obviously today you saw Billy Edwards Jr. get much, much better kind of time to throw and generate some plays. Now, I'm good mentioning this because Matt Mitchell said it in the presser. He held out Mason Reiger today. Just kind of sounds like always watching the workload, veteran type of thing. But they didn't have Reiger chasing down the QBs. And he has been the best defender so far.
Going along with that, John, talking about those deep balls just a little bit more before we flip to the defensive side of the ball, I think a lot of people are curious if Eugene Hilton is going to get significant run, because we know he's made some big time plays here in camp. He's someone that, was a very highly touted high school prospect and someone they're really trying to, I would assume, get in the fold. How much do you think we will see him this fall, and will he be a factor in that passing attack?
I think he's too good to redshirt right now. I guess your definition of significant might be different than someone else's. I feel like Wisconsin has that top group, even though they don't like to talk about depth chart, but the three most consistently getting those top reps, Tretch in the slot, Jaden Ballard, Vinny Anthony. I think they feel pretty good about that. That next wave, Chris Brooks, Tyrell Henry, and then is Eugene Hilton that other guy in that group? I think there's a few other pushing, but I think
maybe Griffin as well. Could
Griffin, I think he's in that mix too. He brings a different sort of size and length to that position, but I just, because he's put together that spring, right, where he turned some heads, and now he's going in the fall with some momentum. I just don't think you turn to him, in 2 weeks and say, okay, we're gonna try to redshirt you. I just think that he's a guy who's talented enough, and guys coming out of high school who play at that level, who are recruited at that level, want to come in and contribute, right? And, maybe he gets a handful of snaps at receiver, but he's contributed on special teams. I think he's going to be a guy that we look at midway through the season, and he's played all 6 games or 5 of the 6 or something in that capacity. I just, again, it's tough to look towards next year or any future roster, but he's a guy that you're looking where the top of that group's a little top heavy, and then he could be battling for that number 1 job the following year. So I think you get him on the field as much as you possibly can in as many different scenarios as possible, and then really he's the kind of the future of that position.
Yeah, if I can just add real quick, Mac, I thought that was super well said. I would just echo, I'd be shell-shocked, if he were, to redshirt. I do not see that happening. And the last couple of days, like Mac, you mentioned, he turned some heads in spring. And then it was a little bit quiet, to begin camp down here. I think maybe the second or third day I had him as a standout, but a lot of other guys were making some plays. Vinny, of course, you expect. Griffin actually has made some of the highlight plays, but it seems that every time you go to Hilton downfield, he's converting. And he had one play for like 50 today that just looked like a really, really natural kind of grab and progression. I think, you guys know I'm very high on his abilities. Sounds like he's really taking everything seriously. I think he's getting used to the college level, conditioning and things of that nature. So sky's the limit. I love how Mac wrapped that up. I think he could be the one by like his mid-sophomore year or so.
Yeah, that would not surprise, I think, a ton of people, just given his skill set. And he's such a natural guy with the ball in the air, right? It seems so effortless in him, the way that he tracks the ball, the way that he uses his body. He's not like huge. He's not 6'4", 6'5". He's 6 foot, 6'1", but he plays bigger than that. And I think that's something that Wisconsin could really use, obviously, on this team behind a truly established number 1 receiver in Vinny Anthony. But let's flip over to the other side of the ball. You mentioned no Mason Reiger, but there's still plenty of guys on that revamped edge unit that will need to make plays on top of him. We've seen a little bit more Corey Walker. What else is sort of either standing out or still a cause for concern there on the edge and the defensive line?
Well, that was just to reiterate, that was just today about Reiger. He's been playing and we got to speak with him, and he just told me he feels the best he's felt physically. So he's going to be a dude. I think Sebastian Cheeks, guys, I'm echoing Mitchell's words a little bit. He's settled in. I'm not sure if he's a 3-down guy every series, but he's gotten in on the run a little bit. His speed just pops. It's just very twitchy, explosive. Like what I've seen from him. And I know the fans, especially that, follow John, myself, people in recruiting, they like hearing about the young guys. Nick Clayton had probably his best day of fall, I would say, today on Friday. He's had other sacks throughout, but just consistency, looks physically different. That room's it's gonna be pretty fun. Fearbreeze coming along, the Kentucky transfer. I'm not sure. I would maybe say the only concern I guess I have, I'm not saying it's been perfect, but it has taken a huge step. So I think it would just be, you hope you can keep those guys healthy and fresh, because kind of lack of, breaks and a lot of snap counts, those were a little bit higher the last year or two. Now you've got some more depth pieces, but you could just see Matt Mitchell's a very, all business, point by point, which I think is awesome. And I think he's really, really good at breaking things down. I think it's helped him in recruiting as well. But you can kind of feel some of the confidence and excitement about the room this year.
Yeah, this is in terms of the players available, the body types available. This room is as unique as I can remember it being. You have those jumbo edges, and guys like a guy like Garner, right? 6'7", 300 pounds. He's that jumbo edge. You have Cheeks and Fearbreeze as those kind of rush guys. A guy like Clayton, true freshman, who might be a guy you just play on third down. You got more of the traditional, a Daryl Peterson, who might play a little bit with his hand in the dirt. So they have a combination of guys, a combination of skill sets, a variety of body types to kind of unleash there. It's going to be really interesting to see how they incorporate that, what kind of packages are available. And then, even bleeding a little bit more into it, a guy like Aaron Witt, who's playing that overhang in the inside, and Thomas Heiberger, who might have a similar role. It's very difficult to peg these guys into one spot. I think it's even more difficult to say this is how the depth chart's going to look, because I think they're going to give a variety of looks with a variety of guys. And I hope to see that, right? I hope that, they don't have all these different intriguing things that they can do and just get real vanilla with it. I think there's going to be a number of guys that can impact depending on down and distance. And that's maybe the thing I'm most excited to see on the defensive side of the ball come week 1 against Miami of Ohio.
Well, what I'm actually really excited to see here on the defensive side of the ball as well is that defensive line, the interior defensive line rotation. Someone who's popped up in the last couple of days, Nick, and has been talked about by Coach Whitlow is Brandon Lane, who's a second-year transfer, right? Who didn't get probably as much run last year as some people expected. But I know just from the reports, from reading you, that he's someone who's really come along and started to stand out here in the second week of camp down in Platteville.
Yeah, Perko, I appreciate that. He was somebody I felt like in the spring he was quieter, and I thought that I maybe would have seen more after a year in the program. The last 2.5 days, I'd probably say he's been the best interior D lineman. I mean, we had a play. It was, I sit with our guy Payne here in the room, and then we've got our friends from the Journal Sentinel as well. We all kind of looked at each other like that was a D lineman, right? I mean, Brandon Lane just showed ridiculous speed. He's obviously big. He's really strong. Again, I don't mean to be repetitive, but it's the same messaging kind of from some of these guys, a Whitlow, a Mitchell, rooms that obviously needed revamping. You can feel that they're more excited about kind of the weapons and really the potential ammunition they have to change things up really in their respective rooms. So I think Perko, he's been good. And I also want to say JVR Suggs. It didn't pop as much as I maybe thought in the spring, but he has been a top 3 guy or so. I think that room I wrote this week, I would trust 7 guys right now. I really would. And they talk about 6 or 7. I would trust at least 7 to go out there, even on a crunch down, 3rd and 2, to really kind of stop a run and such. I really would.
Yeah, and going along that with that on the defensive side of the ball here is obviously with Nyzier Fourqurean's status still up in the air, trending probably the wrong way, at least a little bit at the moment. We've seen some new guys out there at the cornerback position with Ricardo Hallman obviously locking down one side of the field. What has that looked like? Are we going to see an Emilio Agard? Are we going to see a Jameer Scott, some of these young guys, or is it going to be the Deani Hills of the world and the transfers, assuming that Jameer Latimer is probably the starting nickel?
Yeah, he's been playing a lot of slot. Look, guys, I think Agard has gone from a young guy, okay, you should be all right with him at times, to he's had a couple reps this week. Okay, I think he's ready for this, Deani Hill will be in the mix. I think numbers-wise, you're going to have to see some of the freshmen. I'd probably say Scott probably looks the most ready right now just because of being here in the spring. I still really like Jamari Washington's ceiling. Cairo Skanes looks physically ready. But right now, I would lean a guard. Like you said, I think you framed that really well, Parker. I don't think things are trending the best right now. And, I think you really got to give a lot of credit to Nyzier, obviously coming out, practicing and making plays. I know Matt Mitchell had some really good things to say about him live here from Platteville.
Yeah, I think, like you talked about, Nick, Latimer, their preference is to keep him in that slot position. If they're healthy and they stay healthy, I think you feel pretty good. But an injury just creates a domino effect. But maybe the guy to watch too, Nick, you could probably speak to this a bit more, is Skanes, a true freshman, seeing reps. I know he's got some reps with some of the top groups there. Nice length, athletic ability. And, just from a recruiting perspective, he was a late pickup. And now he's, competing for time right away as a true freshman. I think that's definitely intriguing. Not to say he will be the guy. I know Mike Tressel said they're going to need a freshman to probably contribute this year. I don't want to say it's going to be him for sure because there's some talented dudes there, but he's an interesting guy. Brings some length, brings some athleticism. I don't know how great you feel about putting a true freshman at corner, but they might be in that position.
Yeah, I think that it's going to be interesting. Obviously, it's sort of the opposite from what they have there in the safety room, right? When you've got Preston Zachman, who I know has stepped it up here in this second week, plus obviously you've got Austin Brown back there, who's a veteran who's seen a ton of snaps, and two transfers in Matt Young and Trainer, who have a lot of football experience, even if it's not at UW.
I'm excited about that room. I mean, I was pitching, and my guys at Badger247 know this. Austin Brown is a name that wasn't being talked about enough. And he has had a really good, I'd say probably that middle week, practices like 4 through 7, 4 through 8 looked terrific. Zachman's really come along these last couple of days. And again, I wouldn't be, talking about our recruiting stuff. I think Grant Dean might sneak his way onto the field, whether maybe not with the twos, but like special teams. Mac, that was a guy that Mike Tressel noted last week without even being asked about specifically. So I thought that was, really encouraging. I trust that room. I mean, they played a lot of football, as the coaches say, and they've been all over the field so far.
Absolutely. Well, we got to wrap here as Nick is headed back from Platteville, back home here. So we appreciate you taking the time, and we appreciate everyone for tuning in here to the Badger247 show. Make sure that you are subscribed to the website, Badger247.com, for the best info, the best message boards, and all of that good stuff in the known Badgerverse. We'll be back again next week. The guys are wrapping in Platteville on Saturday. We'll be, getting more info as, kickoff is coming in 3 weeks from now. It's pretty crazy, guys. You can taste it in the air. So until then, make sure you're over on the website to get all of that great info and the great message boards. They've been popping off lately. I absolutely love to see it. So until next time, he's John McNamara, he's Nick Osen, I'm Matt Perkins, and we'll see you on those message boards.